Hello everybody, it's time for another episode from your baking queen. Today I'm going to show you how to make a simple 8-inch cake, but not one from scratch. I've noticed most of you buy cake mixes from the store. I do the same thing from time to time. They're simple, they're easy, it's a couple steps, and they're fun to do. So I'm going to show you how to get the most out of your cake mix you buy from the grocery store. Today I'm using Duncan Hines Perfectly Moist Strawberry Supreme Cake. Somebody in this house loves strawberry cake. I don't know who that is. But it was also on sale. So there you go. So the directions are always on the back of your box. You simply follow the directions. It sounds simple and easy, right? Well, there's a couple things people tend to overlook or don't follow, and then their cake doesn't turn out as good as it could. Now these cake mixes are usually made to be kind of fail-proof for the at-home baker. It may not be seasoned, it may be your first time, so even if it doesn't come out quite right, it should still be good enough to eat. Well, let's take it up a notch and make it just a little bit better. So first thing you want to do is you want to open your box. Inside your box should be a bag of your cake mix. Now this is your pre-mixed cake mix. It usually has most of your ingredients already inside this wonderful little bag. So we're going to open our bag and we're going to put it into our mixing bowl. It doesn't get easier than this. It really doesn't. Alright. So the next thing it calls for 1 cup of water. So I have my little measuring cups here. So I'm going to put my 1 cup of water in my mixing bowl along with my cake mix that I just put in there. This recipe calls for 3 large eggs. So I have my 3 large eggs in my bowl, already ready to go. And I'm just going to crack it on the side, right back into my mixing bowl with everything else. Ooh. Now, of course, you can always use an egg substitute if you don't like eggs, you have a dairy allergy, you're vegan, whatever. It's very easy to change up these recipes with stuff like that. But we're just going to follow the recipe as is because, well, we like everything to be as ooey gooey and delicious as possible. So the last thing on the recipe is 1/3 cup of vegetable oil. Now, I have my little measuring cup. I'm going to use extra virgin olive oil. Now let me tell you something. If you use olive oil, it doesn't have to be extra virgin, but olive oil will enhance the flavor of your cake. So, and almost any baking that you do, if you use an extra virgin olive oil, an olive oil versus like a canola, a vegetable, you're going to get a much richer flavor in your cake. So if you have this, I would suggest using this. If you don't have this, because I know this is a little more expensive than a vegetable oil or canola oil, that's okay, no big deal. Just if you want to kind of like elevate the flavor of your cakes, cupcakes, various different desserts that you may be making, go with the oil, the extra virgin if you have it. So I'm going to measure out my 1/3 cup right into my bowl. Put the lid on that because the dogs are hovering today, let me tell you. Okay, and everything's in my bowl. I don't know if you can see that, let me dump it everywhere. I'm going to put my bowl right on my mixer, my stand mixer, over here on the side. Now this is the part most people don't understand. On the instructions, which some people don't read thoroughly, it says to blend your cake mix, water, oil, and eggs in a large bowl at low speed until moistened, which is about 30 seconds. And then you're going to beat it at a medium speed for 2 minutes. And then you're going to pour your batter into your cake pan. And then it has your little hand mixer attachment, because a lot of people have hand mixers. They don't have a fancy stand mixer like I do. So you need to make sure you beat this cake mix for about 2 minutes. That's going to help everything incorporate. That's going to get the air in there. It's going to beat the eggs up, so you're going to have this nice fluffy cake. Now if you want a dense cake, don't mix it that long. But a lot of people like a nice kind of fluffy cake, so if you want that, beat it for like the 2 minutes. So we're going to do that now. So I'm mixing it now. And I'm going to put my timer on my microwave. So our cake is currently mixing for the 2 minutes. So I'm going to show you really quick my quick little kind of cake hack, if you will, to get a really nice level cake, a nice full cake as well. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to grab a cake pan, and I use a deep 8-inch cake pan. You can use any size cake pan you want. I use a deep cake pan because this is like standard for professional kitchen, if you will. It's going to give you a nice deep cake. It's going to be holding more moisture into your cake. And a lot of professional cake decorators will cut the top layer where you get like the crown of the cake off, so you get a nice flat level cake, and this will prevent you from having too much excess as well. So that's what I'm using. I'm going to just use some quick pan release spray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat the bottom of my cake pan, and I'm going to do kind of the corners. So I have the corners at the bottom, and there'll be a little bit of an overspray up on the side, but not a whole lot. So just really quick, just give it a quick spray, and then hit the corner real good. And I don't know how well the camera's going to pick this up, but my cake pan is straight on the bottom. There's a little overspray onto the sides, and I'm going to show you why I'm doing this and a nice little trick so you get some really nice size fluffy cakes. So back to the mixing. 15 seconds left. I'm going to kick it up a little bit here just to make sure all the lumps are out, everything's incorporated really nice, and I get a nice fluffy cake. My timer's going off. Oh, look at that. So, I don't know. Let's see if we can do this. So if you look, you can see that my cake, I don't know how well you can see that, but it has like some little air bubbles and stuff in it. That's from mixing it completely and making sure that everything is incorporated. Everything is starting to work together to start the process with all the different ingredients. Let's see if I can set you down without knocking you over. Okay. So the process has started with my cake mix, getting everything incorporated and everything's working. So it's going to help my cake grow and be this fabulous fluffy cake. So with my spatula, I'm going to take and I'm going to put the entire mix in my deep 8-inch pan for the oven. This is going to be a fabulous cake. I'm telling you right now, this is going to be so good. We use our olive oil. It's going to be a richer cake. We mixed it properly, so it's going to come up nice and fluffy. Like, yes. I got Miss Sherry over here. She's like waiting to lick the bowl or something. Okay, so our cake is in here. So now here's the trick. So you remember we only sprayed the very bottom of our pan and the corner inside, right? So you have a little bit of overspray that's coming up. Okay, so this is what we call rolling. So what you're going to do is you're going to roll your cake mix around the edge of your pan. So it's going to look like that. Can you see that? Where the cake mix has come up to the edge a little bit, but it's not all the way in. So I'm going to put this in here and I'm going to explain to you why I did that. So rolling of the cake pan. So what this is going to do is when you put cake mix in a cake pan, okay, and you spray the entire side, you spray the bottom, so everything is greased down. Some use the grease in the flour method, that's fine too. So what happens is your cake rises up to the line that it creates. So when your cake batter is sitting in your pan, usually that's where your dome is created because it creates like a skin on top of the batter and it holds it kind of in that place. So that's how tall your cake is going to be. Now, usually it gets a little taller than that, but usually not by much. You can put more cake batter in there and it'll push it up to be the height you want to be, but then you have that huge crown on the top of your cake. And most cake decorators cut that off because they want a level cake, and then you have all this extra cake that you wasted. So the other thing I'm doing, so the instructions on here, they say to bake this at 350 degrees, and then for the size cake, it's an 8-inch round. Now this is a thick 8-inch round, so two of the kind of shallow pans, it says 24 to 30 minutes. So because I'm using the thicker cake pan, I'm adding more time. Now I'm going to go about 40 minutes to be safe. Now here's my trick. You bake it at a lower temperature when you do this rolling method. So I have my oven set at 310 degrees. I'm going to bake it for about an hour. So it's going to take a lot longer to bake this cake, but what that's going to do is it's not going to have the cake jump up in the pan really fast. It's still going to rise and do what it's going to do. I did my rolling method, so it's going to be able to come up to the height of my batter that has been rolled. Given there's enough batter and enough leavening in there to get it to come up that high. Now, once it's baked, so it's going to bake for this hour. We're going to check it, and you'll see that it's come up, but it's not going to have this huge dome on top. It's not going to be bursting out and all that stuff. It's going to be more level. So there may be some bit of a crust to it usually. Sometimes you get a perfectly flat cake, which is awesome. We'll see what happens with this because again, this is a box cake mix. So these can be give or take here and there. So we'll see you in about an hour when the cake comes out of the oven, and I'll show you our wonderful little tricks and fun stuff and how they turned out. So see you in an hour. Okay everybody, so it's been a little over an hour and the cake is finally out of the oven. I'm going to show you what it looks like when it came out. Now remember we did the rolling method, so we sprayed just the bottom of the pan and did the rolling method. So let's look at the cake now. Okay, so this is what our cake looks like that it is now out of the oven. As you can see, it rose very nicely to the top of our pan, which is what we wanted. This way we're going to have a nice thick cake. So when we get to cut it and fill it and do all that fun stuff later, we have a really nice cake. If you touch the cake, you can feel how spongy it is. So this is going to be a very light, hopefully a moist cake as well. So it does have a little bit of a sink in the middle. So that's probably just from where it's baked up to the sides of the cake. And so I'm going to let this sit just for a minute, and I'm going to show you how we're going to pop this out of this tin. All right, everybody, so our cake has come out of the oven. It looks wonderful. It has come out very nicely into our cake pan all the way to the top. Now remember, we did our rolling method, and it has come up very, very nicely. It is still quite hot because it just came out of the oven. But this is actually one of the better times to get out of your cake pan with the rolling method. And remember, we didn't spray the sides all the way, and that's what helped bring the cake up to the top of the pan. So what you're going to do is, usually what happens is a seal is formed around the edge of your cake here. So I usually just kind of take my fingers and break that seal. Now sometimes, and what looks like happened here, is depending on your cake mix, your recipe, it's going to be a little bit more moist than maybe some other cakes. So to give you that like security that this cake is going to come out of this pan, just take a knife, a simple butter knife. You're gonna, and make sure you have some pot holders or something, because this is still hot. And you're just gonna run your knife down and then around the edge of your cake pan. Make sure your knife is flat. Otherwise you're gonna cut into your cake, and that would not be good, because then you're going to lose some pieces of your cake. So we did that, and then I have these cardboard cake boards that I bought, and all I'm going to do is flip this over onto my board like so. I want to give it a decent tapping. Now this should lift off, so hopefully it worked. And voila! You have a beautiful, tall cake, nice and flat. It's going to be perfect for when we slice this, fill it, and decorate it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this into the freezer. It's going to help it cool down a little quicker. So then later I'm going to show you how we're going to cut this and fill this and decorate. So then you'll have this wonderful cake for a special occasion, just because, a little party, get together, whatever you want. But there you go. So I'll see you in just a little bit. Okay, so here's our cake. It's baked, it's beautiful, it's ready to be cut and filled. So what we're going to do is, you're going to put your cake on a cake board, or straight on your turntable. Now I bought this inexpensive plastic turntable. It's worked very well for me so far. It's a Wilton brand turntable. You can find turntables online. You can find them at Michael's, Joann's, all the stores usually carry them. If you don't have a turntable, if you have a Lazy Susan, same concept. It's just something that you put on that will turn. So if you don't have a turntable, you don't have the money to go out and get one right away. If you have a Lazy Susan or something adjacent to that, it'll work just as well. Because all we're doing is it's going to help us when it's to cut the cake, and of course to decorate it a little later on. So what you're going to want is, you're going to want a nice serrated knife. I have this wonderful size one. Now they make them in different sizes. This is perfect for my 8-inch cake. Now if you're going to do a bigger cake, of course they make the really, really long ones. I believe they're like 21 inches. But this is going to do the job for me today. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to cut my cake in half, and then half and half. So I'm going to end up with 4 layers from this one cake. And because this turned out so perfect and flat, as long as I cut the other layers correctly, I should end up with just the perfect cake. So you're just going to take your serrated knife, and remember it's serrated, so it's like a saw, and you're sawing into your cake and turning a little at a time. Now this cake was frozen. I put it in the freezer to get it to cool, and sometimes they're easier to work with when they're frozen, so the outside is a little thawed out. but the inside is still a little frozen. But you're just going to basically make yourself a line. And just keep following your line as you go around and keep turning your cake. So it should cut your cake pretty evenly. And there you go. And there you go. So we're going to do this again for this layer and then for the other layer. And then we'll be ready to start icing, filling in icing. Alright everybody, so now we're going to make our icing for our cake. Now I'm going to use a whipped icing. This is, we like the whipped icing over a buttercream or cream cheese. It's just lighter, fluffier, doesn't feel quite so heavy. I'm actually going to do a Grand Marnier whipped icing today. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So first of all, I'm going to tell you, I got some heavy whipping cream from Publix. You can get any brand, it doesn't have to be this brand. I didn't realize I had this small carton left, so I'm going to use the bigger 1 quart size and the little bit I have left in here today. Probably won't use all of this for our cake, but I usually get at least the 1 quart size for an 8-inch round cake just to make sure I have enough icing. And if I have some left over, well, that's just a little extra for a dessert later, or some people like to eat, icing out of the bowl, which is always fun. Now, a quick tip is my bowl was in the refrigerator along with my whip. That's going to help your whipped icing whip up better. So if you don't have time to do that, it's not a big deal. Just know that it does whip up a lot faster, fluffier. It also holds a lot longer if you do that. So that's my 1 pint. I'm going to put the little bit I had in here as well, just to use that up. There we go. So now, a lot of people don't know this, but your heavy whipping cream like this does not have any sweetener in it. It is simply just your cream. So if you want it to be more like a whipped topping, you're going to have to add sweetener to it of some sort. I, of course, am going to use sugar. Now, the ratio most recipes call for is a teaspoon per cup. So I have about 5 cups here. So I'm going to do 5 teaspoons of my confectioners, also known as powdered sugar. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Alright, so we have our heavy cream, we have our sugar. Now I'm going to add flavoring, and today I'm going to use a Grand Marnier. So here's our Grand Marnier. This is, of course, orange, made from oranges, so it has like that orange kind of flavor to it. So you don't need a lot. I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of Grand Marnier. And this is always up to your flavor, your taste. If you want a little bit more, put a little bit more. You don't want to add too much liquid to this because you want your whipped topping to whip up nice and fluffy too. So we're going to put this up here and I'm going to whip it up. And we'll whip this up until it's nice and fluffy. Alright, so now we have a nice peaked, hard peak. I like to do a hard peak. Whipped cream icing. See if I can show you a little sample of this. This is what it looks like. It's come out really nice. And that's going to work really, really well on our cake when we use it for decoration. Alright, now we're ready to start filling our cake for decoration. So I wasn't able to cut my cake completely flat because of the little part in the middle that's still a little frozen. So I had a little trouble with that, but that's okay. this is still going to turn out really, really nice. We're going to be able to fix all this with the different layers and the fillings and all that good stuff. So I put my first layer down on my cake board, and I still have it on my turntable so I can turn it as needed. So I'm going to take a little bit of my Grand Marnier whipped cream, whipped topping, whatever you want to call it, and I'm just going to take my spatula and I'm going to kind of spread it out here. Very nice. Now I also have some strawberries. Now I have frozen strawberries that I had for another project I had done that I'm going to utilize for this one. You don't have to use frozen strawberries. Frozen strawberries, of course, are going to be very different versus a fresh strawberry. So your frozen strawberry, after it thaws out, it's going to be very gooey, very gummy. So you may want to get some fresh strawberries for this, but because I had these, I want to use them, so I don't have anything go to waste. Of course, I could have just left them in the freezer for something else. But basically, I'm just going to take a paring knife, I'm going to cut them up, and I'm going to do it just long ways, and then I'm going to place them in my whipped cream. So this is going to give me kind of a fresh strawberries and cream filling. Oh, I can smell it. They smell wonderful though. Usually with the frozen strawberries, they put a little extra stuff in there and then so they can freeze them. Of course they come out and there's, you know, all kinds of juices and stuff. So this may not be the best thing, especially if it's your first time making a cake, doing a filling of sorts. Now I'm cutting them so that they lay a little flat, because if I didn't, I would have a very, very bumpy cake. Of course, you'd have a whole lot of filling, which people seem to love. But the thing about a good cake is the ratio of your filling, your icing, and your cake. You have people that like more icing, you have people that like more cake, you have people that like more filling. But you also have to remember structure. Structure is a big deal when it comes to cake building, especially when you're working with fillings and different types of icing. If your icing is a little runny, watery, it's not going to hold up very well. If your filling like this is a little watery, it may not hold up very well either. So hopefully my stiff peaked whipped cream is going to help me out with that a little later. Maybe one more piece for this one. There we go. Alright, so that's my first layer. And there you go. You just kind of put them in there, almost like strawberry shortcake. And then you just take your second layer, you place that on top. Make sure it's lined up with your first layer. And then we're going to keep going. So I'm going to do the other two layers, and then I'll be right back to show you how to do the outside. Alright, so now we have all of our layers filled with our icing and our strawberries. So now we're ready to put the outer layer of icing on and give it a nice smooth finish. Maybe a little decorating. We'll see how much icing we end up with. So, I'm going to take my icing, and a lot of people do this a lot of different ways. So this is how I do mine. I usually pile up my icing up top. So I have a generous amount of icing to work with. Then I take my spatula, and I'm using my offset today because my other tools are still at work. But If you have a nice straight spatula, they usually help you out a lot more. And then I'm just going to take and I'm going to spread my icing, kind of pushing it into the cake at the same time, but spread it on from the tops over the sides and work my way around my cake, covering it in the process. Make sure we have a decent amount of cake icing on there. You really don't want any of your cake to show through your icing, is the trick here. So if you see cake, you probably want to put a little bit more icing on the outside. I'm going to keep going here. Make sure I get all my sides, my tops. I know I have a bunch here on the top still, so I'm going to try to scrape a little down just so I don't have too much icing on the top of my cake. Again, this is all up to your personal preference, of course. If you like a lot of icing, put a lot of icing. If you don't. I'm just showing you my personal taste and what we like here and what we deal with. Okay, so it's pretty much iced, but I'm going to make it a little bit more professional. Now we have these lovely scrapers here. These are for cake decorating. Some people use paint scrapers and different things. You can order these online. I think they're called bowl scrapers. They're not called cake scrapers or anything. I think they're called bowl scrapers. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them from various cake supply websites. They're usually very inexpensive. The thing about you want to make sure is the flat side doesn't have any ridges or any scrapes or bumps, because that's going to show up on your cake. So what I like to do is go along the bottom baseboard first and scrape up any icing, any remnants of any cake crumbs off my board. Scrape that into my bowl. And then you're going to just lightly, because you're going to use like the pressure from your hand and the cake scraper, and you're going to turn your cake until you get a smoothly iced cake, or what you're happy with. Some people don't mind if there's some bumps, don't mind if there's some gouges or whatever. And then I'm just kind of cleaning out the tops and the edges here, because basically when you get done with your icing, you want it to look like a hat box. And there you go. So that's your basic iced cake, 8-inch cake anyway. Now if you want to get a little bit more creative, you can get a comb. Now this is a very popular tool. It's a triangle. It's got the ridges in 3 different sizes on the side. There's other combs that they sell with different designs. These are really easy to use, and they add a little bit of element to your cake as well. So same thing, you just put it on the side of your cake, and you just rotate until you get, I don't know how well you guys can see that, until you get just a nice ridged look on the side of your cake. Just gives it like that special, like that little extra something, little edge, whatever. And makes it look a little bit more professional. Alright, so we got our cake all nice and iced. It's all level and it looks really good right now. You can stop here if you want to, but if you have some piping experience or you want to try a little bit on your cake, so I have my piping bag and I have a star tip in there. See if you can see that. There it is. We're going to do a very just simple shell border on the bottom. I'm going to get a little fancy. I'm going to do a reverse shell. Let's see if I can do this where you guys can see it. So I'm just going to start on one end, and I'm going to just do some swirls back and forth, moving my turntable as I go. So give me a really pretty little border on the bottom. Then I'm going to repeat that on the top. There you go, and it just gives you a nice, a more finished look to your cake. I like the reverse shell just because it's a little bit more elegant to me. Again, this is completely up to you what you want to do. I'm going to take my few remaining strawberries that I had, and I'm just gonna put them up top, just so that there's a little decor happening, and it's not completely blank because I really don't have anything else to decorate with at this time. But that's okay. I'm sure it'll still be very, very delicious. Okay guys, well there you go. Let me see if I can tilt this to you so you can see. Looks, I mean, it's a plain cake looking from the outside, but I mean, it'll do in a pinch. You got an office party you're going to, a friend's house, just a quick little get together, nothing super important. This is something easy you can do at home. I hope I've given you some inspiration and a few tips and tricks. And so until next time, this is the Baking Queen saying, keep on baking.